Hierarchy is a system or an organization in which people or groups, or in our case, interface elements, are ranked one above the other according to their status or authority. So to echo the importance of typographical hierarchy, check out this tweet from Matthew Sanders, one of the lead designers on the YouVersion team. He says, "If you truly want to improve your worth as a graphic, web, or application designer, cover your basics first. Typographical mastery is crucial. We shouldn't have to correct work on such a fundamental level." And then Noah Levin, who is currently the design director at Figma, he says, "Totally agree. Type and hierarchy are the two biggest issues I notice in design portfolios, and it matters so much for comprehension and usability." So why is hierarchy so important? Well, it's important because it elevates the significance of one UI element over another in the context of a general layout. And hierarchy is typically created first and foremost with your typography size and style. Now, this doesn't mean that all titles should be necessarily larger and more important than body copy just because it's the title. And it doesn't mean that all interactive elements should be colorful and more pronounced and way over the top, more prominent and higher of a hierarchy than all the other elements just because they are interactive. It just means that hierarchy is important to consider while creating your design. There's not going to be a single right or wrong answer until you have the full context of the design. So here are some things to think about when considering hierarchy for your screen design. Number one, what do you think the user is planning to do on a particular screen? Number two, are they planning to explore and browse, or did they come for something extremely specific? Number three, what are you hoping the user does or can do on a particular screen? This will be slightly different than what you think they will do. Number four, what is the most important piece of information on the screen? What is the second most important thing on the screen, and what's the third most important on the screen? That is basically hierarchy in a nutshell, just ranking things one above the other. And sometimes, not always, the most important thing should be the most prominent thing, the largest, the most visually heavy thing. So for a quick reference, let's take a look at some examples. On this Apple.com homepage, they just announced the AirPods Pro, and it's very likely that this will be changed by the time you're watching the video, so bear with me here. Now, AirPods Pro, that is the biggest piece of information on this screen. AirPods Pro, magic like you've never heard, learn more, buy. So they're ranking this, number one, the giant image. Number two, the name of the image. Number three, the tagline. And then fourth is going to be learn more and buy. So that's this hierarchy on this particular section. And then if you scroll down, basically have the same kind of thing, but things are getting a little bit more crowded. Now we have number one is the image, number two is the title, three is going to be here, and then the fourth thing is going to be learn more and buy. And then they have this little pricing information right in here that they do not have on this main screen. And you can see the main image has more power and has more gravitas associated with it because there's not that extra line of text. And also, if you look closely, there's more negative space around the top of this. So that's like right at maybe 100 pixels tall of negative space. And then if you look at this one, there is only about 60 pixels of negative space. Now to get these crosshairs, I'm just hitting Command-Shift-4, which takes a small screenshot. I'm just hitting escape and not taking a screenshot. But you can see just between these two, the hierarchy is different because there's less information. Even though it's the same size, this is obviously kind of like the main most important thing. Plus it's on top, so you can't argue with the hierarchy if you're just using a single column layout. And then on the third section, they have the same exact typographic styling, but it's on a white background with black text, and it doesn't have as much weight when it's reversed out. So as simple as this seems, there's actually a lot going on here. There's more negative space. This is still reversed out. But then when you get down here, it's the exact same size, but the colors are slightly different. and the white background kind of takes the power out of that title. And then as you scroll down here, you have slightly smaller secondary headings for each one. All right, so next, let's take a look at a simple text message app, just the Messages app on the iPhone. So if you look here, you have a giant Messages title, lots of negative space, but then as you scroll, you get the Messages title is much smaller in the top. See how it goes to like 17 point font? It goes from like the really big to the smaller. And actually the message title and the name of the people that you're texting with is the exact same size. And then you have the smaller, more subdued text to kind of show you a preview of what that message was about. But then if you go into the detail, every piece of text is the exact same size, except for the name, because you already know, okay, in this case, I'm chatting with Sam. But every other piece of text is a large, just body copy text, except for the smaller, the timestamp on each one. And so, as simple of an example this is, it's kind of powerful to understand, okay, I'm on the screen, I can see the messages, I have, that's kind of number one. These are my messages. That's kind of like the most important thing on the screen in terms of typographical hierarchy. And then secondarily, there are the names and the avatars with everyone that you've texted with. And then as the third thing, you have the preview that's showing and, the timestamp for when it happened. Whereas when you go to the detail screen, it's all kind of completely flat because you're just reading messages back and forth. But you'll notice that the emojis are actually larger because, if you think about conveying emotion in an interaction with someone, sometimes that's a little bit more important than the actual text. So if you just do one emoji, it's actually larger. And that's kind of a design decision based on hierarchy and what's more important in that context, because they're putting in an emotion into this conversation. So if we're just doing one emotion, sometimes emotion is more powerful than just simply like writing ha ha ha. A crying, laughing emoji is a little bit more powerful than saying ha 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 or LOL. So in that case, they're choosing hierarchy in that particular case based on that emotion. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. I'm going to pull up GoSquared.com here. This is what I use for analytics for a lot of my websites. So we're looking at the traffic on useflowkit.com, and immediately you get put into this now category. So currently, if you kind of zoom out and look at everything, really this circle here and this number is one of the largest things on the screen. And so in their minds, they're saying, I bet the user wants to know how many visitors are online right now. And that is the largest thing. And then you have all of these other headings that are similar in terms of engagement time, visitor number, devices. A lot of these numbers are flat and not larger than the other because it's more of a kind of a browsing overview type of situation here. So if you go to trends, it's the same thing. You got a big number right here. You got your graph, and then these little view switchers here are affecting the entire page. So these are actually treated a little bit larger fonts than the individual smaller panels here, where you're just kind of only controlling what's inside of that particular module. Now they did kind of keep their larger numbers for switching between here, but I think that's a little bit more consistent with the larger numbers that they're using already in some of the other modules. But you'll look, these modules all have titles: sources, content, devices, engagement. And technically, you could technically call these H2s or secondary headers. Just gonna see, yeah, they have them put as H2s in here. But they're much more reduced than the rest of the content because they're just titling a small module. So it's just because something is a secondary header doesn't mean that it needs to be the secondary priority on the entire screen. A lot of the information here is more priority. Just knowing the information inside of here is a higher priority than seeing a giant title on top of everything. Now, it's not to say that the design couldn't work if they used bigger titles, but it's just a design decision that they made when they laid this out. And I've been using this for a long time. I think it works well. It's got a nice design to it, and I'm happy with it. Okay, lastly, I want to pull up a project that I worked on for a client based out of Toronto called FiberStream. Now, I did their marketing site, and this was a project that we did a secondary project after a few months had passed. So I've got everything kind of broken up into features here, but what I really want to focus on is this dashboard section. We designed all of this mobile first, and you can see some of the larger screens here were really just an expanded version of the mobile screen. We wanted it to be super clean and just not a lot going on. We wanted it to feel very simple, very easy to know what your services were, what your billing was like, you know, even paying your bills. And that is, a lot of this is made possible with just heavy use of negative space, a big typeface, and just a really clean layout. There's not a lot going on, so it's easy to kind of accentuate and make the hierarchy very apparent. So it's like title and then content, title and then content. And that was kind of the simplistic hierarchy that we wanted to go with. But if you look over here on the mobile dashboard, one thing that we did was we decided to use, let's see, I think this is, 16-point font here. Font is Avant-Garde. And this is kind of like the main title size, 16 point. But we wanted to have these larger titles that mimicked some of these interior pages. This is like a 32 point size, and we're mimicking that here. We wanted these modules that were kind of more of a call to action based module. We wanted them to be larger. So this is something that the client really wanted to accentuate. You know, set up your auto pay. This would allow people to set up an automatic payment, so there wouldn't be as many, you know, credit card misfires and things like that, things that cause them like a lot of support headaches. So we're using typography here to call out this to be a little bit larger, even though that might not be as important as your balance is due. Look, you got this much left on your May 7th invoice, and you have this much left on your April 7th invoice. So the biggest priority here is this giant orange button. We want you to pay your bill. But beyond that, we've got set up auto pay. Hey, why don't you upgrade your router? So you can see, just glancing at 16, 16, and then we've got 32 and 32. And then some of these smaller type sizes are 14 point inside of here. And so once you've got your auto pay set up, then we reduce the title size to be similar to the rest of the modules. Got service status, and we're kind of giving enough space over here to make room for these icons. So lots of negative space, kind of big and blocky. And then also for your service repair that you have upcoming, we're bringing that back in. So we're using, you know, a double size of the typeface to give certain modules more hierarchy. The modules that are slightly more important are getting larger titles. It's based on hierarchy. We want these to be ranking higher than the rest, so they have a larger typeface. So it's less about header 1, header 2, header 3. It's more about the context that a business or a user would find, okay, what's important on the screen? Well, it's important for the business and for the customer to pay this bill. And it's important for the business to be able to set up auto pay and upgrade a router. And everything else is still there. And the portal is really primarily for just setting up your internet service. So it's not like there needs to be that much more going on. So that's just another simple example of using type size to create specific hierarchy based on the user's needs and based on the business needs. All right, for homework, I want you to design a leaderboard module. It can be like dribble size shot or a mobile shot or a website, you know, like a larger screen website. But I want you to design a leaderboard that's gonna have 5 to 10 people with a little avatar, their name and their rank, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way down, and some kind of arbitrary score, like number one person earned 1,500 points or whatever, some kind of, maybe it's a time, whatever kind of theme that you want to put on it, make it fun for yourself. And I want you to give the module some filters at the top, like all-time leaderboard, last 7 days leaderboard, and last 30 days leaderboard. So it adds a little bit of an interactivity, like a view switcher. And I want the list of people or the module itself to have a title. So you come up with a title like top, race finishers, whatever you want to call it, it's fine. And it can be a large title or a small title. It's up to you. You decide on whether it should go above or below the filters. And maybe the first place person's name is the largest on the screen. Maybe the title is the largest. You decide what works best for your particular leaderboard. And the biggest thing that I want you to think about here is just using a lens of hierarchy. Is this going to be where somebody really needs to come see the first person and that's the biggest goal? Or is this just a scannable list of 10 people? And for this particular piece of homework, I want to show you a couple of tips and tricks inside of Sketch and Figma that will help you go a little bit faster. So let's take a quick look. All right, so I've gotten started here with a couple of avatars and some names, some very long names that I don't know if I can pronounce. But basically the way that I created these was inside of Sketch, just draw a circle. And all I'm going to do is come over here to data and then go to faces. And then it's going to automatically generate a face for you. And I'm going to create a text field, and it doesn't matter what I type or even if I messed up the case. I'm just going to make it black for now and choose the name. And I'm going to come up here and do sketch data again and do names. So it's going to give me a name. You're going to have to play around with, the avatar size. I'm just going to start off with 48 to see how that works. And so we've got one person here. Now you can go in here and just option drag and then duplicate this by hitting Command D. And you can actually select all of this and hit refresh data. And then it's going to give you, all of these different names and images. So that circle was put on by default, but I'm just going to make a little border here with maybe a 10% fill. That way for images like this, there's a little bit more of a border. And with an image like this, you don't even really see the border because the image is so dark. So that's one way to do it. You can also, copy this, copy these names, option drag, and then you could type in 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. I'm not going to do all of them. And you move it around, you decide what needs to go where, you decide the typeface. You're welcome to stick with San Francisco Pro, and then also you want to give them like a score over here on the right. So you might select these and do right aligned, align them over here to the right. Whoops. And you'll have to decide too, like if you're going to use this type size, test it out with, okay, if we're going to do 10,000 points and this person has a really long name, are we going to truncate their name? And that would be like a rule against, like a development rule. Okay, if it's more than 25 characters, we need to truncate it and add like a ... Or, maybe the rule is you break your name into a double line and you have to have a special component in that instance, or just kind of a slightly different version. And you might decide that these need to be smaller, so no big deal. And you can always select this again and hit refresh data if you want to change those. And another thing that you might consider doing, once you have one design that you really like, I'm just going to pull this down here. Maybe give it a background and send that to the back. And make sure you have some good spacing here and there. Let's see, make that 16 all the way around just for now. Or maybe we'll go down to 12 for the top and bottom. Because once we start stacking these up, we don't want a ton of negative space in between everything. All right, so that's good enough for now. I'm going to make this, I'm just gonna make this white. I just wanted it to have a background so we would be able to create a symbol here. And I'm just gonna call this person. And then if we look on our symbols page, we have this person here. And now we could just duplicate the symbol, Command D, Command D, Command D. And now we can grab everything again and hit refresh data again. It's trying to put names on all of the numbers and everything as well. All right, what we could do is temporarily take these out. I'm just gonna hit Command X and then go in and do refresh data. And then we could go back in to this master component and paste that back in. And then we'll have all of these numbers. And then you could change these as you wanted. So you can double click on this child element, or you can go over here and change it there. Might be a little bit easier to change it over here. Okay, so let's take a look at how this would work inside of Figma as well. Inside of Figma, there are some plugins that you can use. Go to plugins and go browse all plugins and type in avatars and grab this one by Dylan Feltus. And then also you just click installed and then do names, and we'll do random name generator and install that one. And then once we have that installed, then we can just draw our circle. We'll do 32 by 32. And I'm just gonna make a few circles. Let's just kind of give ourselves a grid. And now I'm gonna go to plugins, avatars, and it's just gonna populate everything using the the UIfaces.co API. And then once you have some, you could just choose 5 or 10, however many you wanted. So let's just grab, I don't know, let's grab this guy, drag him down here. And I've got some text here. I'm using San Francisco, using 16-point font. You can use whatever you want. And this is where the align tools that we worked on in the first module come in handy. So I'm just gonna select these two items and hit Control-Command/, and that's gonna align them how I want. And then same thing here, we could just draw a little bit of a background, send this all the way to the back. And I'll leave it gray for now. Okay. Maybe I'll make these 20 from the edge and 8 from the top and bottom. See how that goes. Make that white. Now I'm gonna hit Command Option K to make it a component. You can see here that under Object, Create Component is Command Option K. Can't remember if that is default or if I actually set that up as a custom quick key. Then I can do the same thing, duplicate this, just get rid of all these. And again, I can grab these. Don't know if I can do avatar. Yeah, I need to select all of the individual avatars and then hit avatars again. Those will repopulate. And then I can select the names and go to random name generator. So now we can make an assumption to do female names and male names. So now we have a component. This is the master component because it has this little filled in icon here, and the rest are instances of the main component. So you can see if I move this, it's gonna move all the rest. And that's the same thing that we have here in Sketch. If I go here and change the component, all of them are going to move, but that's the big difference between Sketch and Figma. These components, you can't edit them in place the same way you can inside of Figma. So if you want to edit a symbol, it's going to have to be on the symbol page when you're using Sketch. But you don't necessarily have to use symbols. This can be something that you just design and you don't worry too much about components. It's just wanted to show you a little quick way that might help you out. So please share what you design in the Slack channel, and if you're feeling good about it, as always, post it on Dribbble. Happy to get feedback there as well. So let's get started designing, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.